I agree with you. Poitras's going to be up in that top 6, at least for parts of games. You saw it all Wednesday night. They were mixing and matching lines. But if Coyle can kind of settle in with Marchand and DeBrusk against these lower tier teams, and Poitras still producing on the third line, and he can prove he can play with Geekie and Frederick, maybe that tells you more. But I would rather Poitras be on that second line. I think it makes more sense.
Yeah, and part of that too, like that would help him get a look in the top six, like an extended look in the top 6 would be, last night. I think disjointed is too harsh of a word for the top 6, but they're still building chemistry. Coyle, Marchand, Coyle, DeBrusk had a very small sample last year, and they were pretty good in that very small sample, but they're still feeling each other out, and they hardly played together, all three of them, in the preseason.
Bruins Beat is brought to you by Fanduel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
And welcome into Bruins Beat on CLNS Media. My name is Evan Marinofsky, and today we are here with Pat Donnelly. Pat, what is up?
What's going on? Happy to be back.
Yeah, you're back. It's the 2 Bruins Beats a week, 2 Poke the Bears, lots of content coming out, so Pat is going to be in the fold as much as he wants to be. I don't want to force him into it or anything, but he'll be involved as much as he would like. And there's quite a lot to talk about. How was it? How did you? We were seated like a couple people away from each other on Wednesday night. How did it feel to be back?
Yeah, it was great. Press box was packed. It's kind of
It's
kind of the territory on opening night and with all the festivities and stuff. But I thought the pregame stuff was really cool. Obviously, seeing everybody come back and the ovations for some of the guys, like the 2011 team. Like Sean Thornton got a great ovation. Tim Thomas was nuts. And then obviously, Bobby Orr brings the house down. So that was really cool.
Yeah, I thought they nailed the 100-year ceremony. I thought that was an awesome. They did it well. It wasn't long. It wasn't like it was 30 minutes. I think it was like 7 in total, someone said. And as you said, the ovations were awesome. Thornton, Thomas, Bergeron's ovation. First time Chara he was back. Chara, it just was well done. And it was simple. And who seems like the coolest guy? And I've only heard good things about him. And he'd be someone that you'd love to sit down and just have a beer with. Phil Esposito. Obviously well before our time.
Yeah.
It seems like a cool dude. And there was a cool video the Bruins posted of him messing with some kid with his hockey stick and blaming Bobby Orr.
Yeah, I saw that. That's something those kids should remember for the rest of their lives.
I would hope those kids understand the significance. Yeah. I feel, we're both young. We would understand it. We grew up with our parents telling us, hey, Bobby Orr, we have the picture and him flying through the air. I hope those kids feel the same way about that, or at least someday will be like, oh my God, that's sick. So
that's a great story to just have in your back pocket too, for the rest of your life, just icebreaker or something,
I was going to say when the teacher, when they enter, a new class or whatever, and the teacher says we're doing an icebreaker, give me a fun fact. That's an easy fun fact to pull out. I never have one. I never had someone's like, tell us a fun fact about yourself. It's so vague. I don't know. I never knew what to say for that. So if I had that, I would have been sick. I would have been set for my life.
I mean, I always remember thinking first day of classes at school or whatever, and you're like, oh, I got all these fun facts, and then they ask you, and your mind's empty.
Empty, exactly. I got nothing, and I'm not that interesting. My life at age 14, not much has happened to me. We go to Maine every summer. That was the one I would always people would go, oh, nice, that's awesome. But yeah, incredible. Just the whole thing. And then the jerseys, the sweaters. Where do you stand on that? I know you've been very outspoken in your rankings. Where do you have the new alternates?
So, I mean, I really like them overall. I know some people would prefer just go with a regular replica throwback or something. I think the alternates are sick. Seeing them last night, the brown is so good. So I'd rank those 1. I think very close to is the aways. I think they just look sharp, clean. And the gold seems like the weird gold that they're using, the Vegas gold, I guess, seems to really pop more on those. Mm-hmm. And then the homes they're fine. I've grown on them for sure since the Centennial takeoff fashion show at Logan. But I still like don't think they seem a little dull with that gold.
Yeah, when I first saw the fashion show and I saw the pictures online of the sweaters, I thought the home regular, the black ones, would be I thought from then the alternates were number one, and they proved it. I think they look sharp as hell on the ice.
Yep.
If it was up to me, you'd wear those like every game if you could possibly do it. Those look so good. I initially thought the aways were going to be third, and after seeing them on the ice for the first time in Buffalo in the preseason, aways are two. The away ones are so clean. I have nothing against the home black ones, but they're fine. I just think the other two are so elite, and good for them. I mean, they nailed those. It would have been really terrible if they just completely dropped the ball on 100-year jerseys. Yeah. So definitely good to see. So yeah, I mean, so far so good. We'll see. We're recording this Thursday afternoon. We'll see what the 100-year kind of team will be. Again, that's going to be after this, so we'll kind of get to that at a later date. But overall, let's jump to what happened in the game, because I think there's a lot to take from Thursday's game or Wednesday's game. It's tough to evaluate this because the Blackhawks are brutal outside of Connor Bedard. I mean, Ryan, love Dexter, love Harvard, love the Donato family. Ryan Donato, hometown guy, New England Hockey Journal, just love him. But, top line forward right now, I don't know, probably not. And then Taylor Hall obviously got injured.
I didn't even see the hit.
I didn't either.
Couldn't find it anywhere.
So I found it on Twitter. It was borderline by Carlo. Hall didn't see him coming. I think Carlo anticipated to get the puck, and he really didn't. Kind of came from the blind side a bit. But that Blackhawks roster is rough. And that's why, overall, we can start with Bedard real quick. I know Bruins fans are not probably enthralled to hear about this, but we can get this out of the way now. What did you think of Bedard?
I thought he was good. I actually thought he was better on Tuesday night, which is understandable. He's playing a back-to-back in his first two games in the NHL. And against, obviously Pittsburgh isn't what they once were, and the Bruins aren't either, but it's two heavy and good teams at least. But he's an exciting player, man. Every time he touches the puck, you're like, all right, what's he going to do? There was one, I think it was Brandon Carlos tripped over the blue line and started streaking down him. You're like, oh my God, what is going to happen here? And he forced Ullmark to make some good saves. I kind of appreciate that he's still doing what he did kind of in junior, just shooting the puck from literally anywhere, no bad shots. And I was glad to A, witness his first goal, and B, I had a little skin on it just because everybody scores their first goal against the Bruins. Lemieux, Crosby, why not Bedard? And so that was cool. But he's gonna need to bulk up, eat a sandwich, lift some weights. There were some times he got a little manhandled, but that'll come. He's only 18.
Yeah, I think he's terrific. I think to me what stands out, everyone's going to compare McDavid and Bedard. I think they're different. Yeah. McDavid's speed is just ridiculous. I don't think Bedard has that level of speed. Obviously, he's a fast player. I just think his shiftiness in the hockey sense, just so smart. From what I saw on Wednesday, didn't really ever put himself in a position, I think he would recognize if defensemen were closing in on him and he had no options, and he made a smart play most of the time to get out of that, whereas I think other younger, skilled players would just try to go through it. Yeah, you're right, though.
There was one on the Blackhawks first period power plays. He tried to go between McAvoy and Grzelcyk, and they just sandwiched him. Yeah,
I mean it's stuff like that. Obviously, I think he will eventually learn, hopefully, to not do that. But the release, that shot is ridiculous. It is. Just his way of putting it around defenders. ESPN showed it on Tuesday night against the Penguins. I don't know how well TNT. I would imagine they showed it well. On Wednesday. But yeah, kid's the real deal. 2 points in 2 games. That's not bad. And that's the other thing. I think he hits 80. I think he hits somewhere around 80 points because who else is getting the points on that team? And I think he's got a lot. First power play unit, first line, he's the guy.
Yeah, I think points could go maybe either way on over under 80, but I do see him getting 35 goals. I don't think that'll be hard for him with that shot. What do you think of the coverage?
Oh God. It's been a lot. I think Marchand, you can tell, is already super sick of it. And I think to me, Marchand obviously made some headlines with what he really didn't say. And I get it. Marchand is the anti-Bedard, didn't come up hyped, looked over by scouts, had to make his own way, all those things. Bedard is the opposite. And it's not Bedard's fault, by the way. I mean, he's been a phenom since he was 11. So, it's not his fault. But I just think it's everything Marchand hates, coming in, just already anointed the chosen one. I get why ESPN and TNT and every outlet is doing what they're doing with Bedard. I mean, look, we're talking about Bedard right now, but really because of them. And, you saw the opening to the Tuesday game with the Galaxy and the next one, it's Bedard. I with a lot of these networks, I would be careful. He's not big. You mentioned it. He's not a big guy. And again, I'm not saying, in the league now you can be a smaller player and be effective, but he doesn't have the physical traits of a generational superstar. And, I wish him the best. I hope he kicks ass. He's a fun player to watch. But it seems, though, he has a good head on his shoulders to handle all this. Because I think a lot of guys would crumble with this. Because, do you see the conversation they had him do with Crosby?
I remember seeing, them posting pictures of the two of them sitting down at the media tour. And I was like, holy cow.
Yeah, come on. I mean, I almost feel bad for Crosby because it's I get it. It's part of your duties. You got to, do the media obligations. Yeah. But my goodness, to do all that. But that's Bedard. That's our Bedard second on Connor Bedard. We probably won't be talking much about him later the rest of the year. But switching to things on the ice for the Bruins. The Bruins had their own Connor Bedard on the ice. Own Connor Bedard on the ice with Matt Poitras making his NHL debut and gets an assist. Gets it out of the way right away. Assists on the first goal of the season. And really was one of their better players, I thought, on Wednesday night. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, even if we look at the numbers, they dominated possession with him on the ice. Even every line against the Blackhawks was going to dominate possession.
Yeah, but, that was the one thing.
Going into the third period, his expected goals ratio was over 90%, which is just insane. It obviously came down under 70. It came down to earth. But I thought he looked the part. It was kind of the same deal as the preseason. He had his moments where, there's some stuff that's going to need to be cleaned up. He, in the second, might have been the third period, he tried to do a drop pass to nobody, which is just maybe, getting a little sped up. It's your first game. It's going to happen. But, overall, I thought he was handling the physicality well, the bigger competition. I thought he made a lot of really smart and crafty passes. I mean, the play that he did to set up Frederick's goal, it's that's become kind of his bread and butter, where he kind of pulls up at the hash marks, curls, and he's so patient and poised where he's scanning, finds Carlo across the zone, and they get a goal out of it. So definitely, I think, really something to build on here. And I don't want to overreact to one game. I know you and Connor had your predictions about him sticking for all 82, and I don't know. So far, it's one game, but after the preseason, one game, I could totally see it.
I think he does. I just, the way they speak about him, Montgomery had high praise for him on Wednesday night, and just the smarts. I think that's the biggest thing with a lot of these younger players is are you smart enough to handle the NHL and the fast-paced nature of it? And he has it. He does. He has it. He's got the smarts. He's got good skill. Is he the fastest guy on the ice? No. Is he the biggest? No. But he fits. He fits. And to go in the third line, and again, it's against the Blackhawks. We'll see what he's like over the next 8 games. And again, there's a lot of hockey left in those 8 games to sort of prove. But just the way he plays, I have a tough time thinking they're sending him back. That'd be the biggest tease if they were we're sending him back. He's got 6 points in 9 games. He can go back to Guelph. There's something there, and it's a godsend to this organization, by the way, who for a long time has not had a center prospect who looks poised to jump into the top 6, which is what I want to hit on right now. But before we do, our good friends at Fanduel, our good partners, a word from them. All right, quick second here to tell you about our good friends over at Fanduel. Snap into action this NFL season with Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Again, that's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining Fanduel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. Again, FanDuel.com/Boston. Fanduel, the official partner of the NFL. So, Poitras, great game Wednesday night, gets the assist, all those things. And I'm going to jump even a little more than the 9 games because I think he stays past that. I'd love to see him with Marchand and DeBrusk. Yeah. And, to me, I think the Bruins are at their best with Coyle as the third line center. And you look at, again, it's only been 1 game, but I just think Poitras fits that top 6 a little more than Coyle. And I know that, they sort of promised Coyle a top 6 center spot as much as they can promise. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so the way they've talked about it, they seem to really like Frederic, Poitras, and Geekie, which, I get. They've looked good in a couple of games and in practice and stuff. But I would still probably surround Poitras with, the better wingers, just put him in a better position to succeed. And I feel like, if he can work in the top 6, we talk about how for years, Bergeron and Krejci doing their thing, it just settled everyone into their proper roles. And that would be Charlie Coyle at 3C. And that line with a line of Frederic, Coyle, Geekie would just be a possession monster, forechecking monster. I do worry about maybe being a little redundant. All 3 of them are kind of the same player. To varying degrees. But I mean, I think it's worth seeing how he can do in that Poitras and sort of maybe a bit of more of a checking role. But I do, before these 9 games are up, I do think he'll get a look in the top 6. You got to see what you have. And he's looked good with Marchand in the preseason, and DeBrusk was kind of just okay last night. I thought he had a good third period. But didn't get the look with Poitras. I think it was Poitras and Geekie with Marchand, which it was fine. But I think we will see Poitras in the top 6. And plus, you mentioned the rest of these 8 games. Not only is it a great schedule for the Bruins to start and kind of get their sea legs, but it's also a great schedule for the kid too, because it's a cupcake schedule to start.
Oh my God, I know.
The Sharks, they could. I was looking at their first game, and they don't their first test is the Kings, and then 5 more games, and then the Leafs. They could feasibly start 6-1-1, and just have everybody being Stanley Cup, throw the parade. What was the record again? Let's break it again.
Yeah, the FanDuel odds for the Bruins and the Cup are going to skyrocket in these first 8 games. I agree. You get that West Coast trip. I mean, the only good team on that trip is the Kings. Yeah. As you said. I agree with you though. I think you have to sort of figure out your bottom 6. If you move, Coyle makes sense more in that 3C spot. Would they then take Geekie and put him as the 4th line center? I know they've kind of thought of that before. I like the idea of giving Beecher this shot at 4C. Yeah. Let him just cook down there. And I thought we'll get to the 4th line in a bit, but I thought he was really solid on Wednesday. But again, Poitras has that top 6 upside. I want to see it. He's showing flashes of it. And I just think he would fit better offensively with a Marchand and a DeBrusk. Coyle's a puck possession guy. I think Poitras more of, he dishes it out well. Yeah. The one thing I will say, though, is, and I think this might be a reason, and we won't see a lot of it because these teams are not good in the first 9 games, is, do they want to use Coyle as that shutdown line with Marchand and DeBrusk? I tend to think I'd rather that be on the third line if you can make it work, because one thing we're going to see a lot of this year is this is not the same high-flying scoring team that they were last year. You don't have as many pieces there scoring you goals and points. You saw it last night. I mean, I think if last year's Bruins team faces this Blackhawks team, it's like 6-1 around there.
It was the game they lost in Chicago late in the season.
Oh, that's true. They did. They did lose the game late in the season to Chicago. That was classic. I guess it was a sign of things to come.
Yeah.
But to me, like, I just think they kind of need that scoring. And if Poitra's going to unlock DeBrusk and Marchand scoring more than Coyle, I would rather Coyle be on that third line. Still, though, there's part of me that's like, give Coyle more of a chance in the top six. Let him see what he can do against these teams. And again, I guess if you do, like, I agree with you. Poitra's going to be up in that top six, at least for parts of games. You saw it all Wednesday night. They were mixing and matching lines. But if Coyle can kind of settle in with Marchand and DeBrusk against these lower tier teams, and Poitra's still producing on the third line, and he can prove he can play with Geekie and Frederick, maybe that tells you more. But I would rather Poitras be on that second line. I think it makes more sense.
Yeah, and part of that too, like that would help him get a look in the top six, like an extended look in the top six would be, last night. I think disjointed is too harsh of a word for the top six, but they're still building chemistry. Like, Marchand, Coyle, DeBrusk had a very small sample last year, and they were pretty good in that very small sample, but they're still feeling each other out, and they hardly played together, all three of them, in the preseason. And JVR, Zacha, Pastrnak had their moments. I think, like especially kind of on the power play when the power play actually had some chances.
Yeah.
But it's like at one point, Montgomery talked about last night. He's going to be more inclined to give them more leash to build chemistry. But at some point or another, if it's still choppy and it's still not working, I think you got to see what Poitras has there. And part of it too, like I think if you move Coyle to 3C, I know like what you talked about. I'd rather see Beecher get that run at 4C because I think that skill set is perfect for that role right now. The speed, the heaviness. I think him, Lauko, and Lucic have complemented each other really well so far. And plus, like Geekie, I know Fluto's written about it a bunch. Geekie and Shattenkirk are, it's a drastic system change for them coming from man to man to this zone sort of hybrid thing. So I think defensively getting him up to speed, it'll probably be a lot easier as a winger catching yourself up.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And I just, to me, again, it hits at what you said there. Like just, they have to figure out the pieces in the bottom six.
Yeah.
And up front, I mean, like, an interesting thing with James Van Riemsdyk is at some point, is he going to be bumped out of that top six? Is there going to be a point where they say, you know what, Zacha and Pastrnak are cooking, but there's got to be a better winger on that left side? I don't know who that is yet. I don't. Do you move if Van Riemsdyk I thought was noticeable at times. I
thought he started well, but tapered off.
I agree with you. I think that line had some really good ozone shifts in the first period. I didn't notice them much the rest of the game. And so again, is DeBrusk a better fit there? And then, you kind of finagle the second line with Marchand and Poitras, if that's who it is. And, you put Coyle on the right side. I mean, there's options there. But again, I'm curious to see what they end up doing.
I mean,
Van Riemsdyk.
I know we've talked about, Zacha is a center and he's, a great number two in a perfect world. But I mean, so I don't want to get too far gone here with comparisons, but Oh
no, let's do it. Let's get far gone with comparisons.
So I mean, Marchand compared Poitras to Marner, I'd probably lean more towards like a type of cerebral playmaker, like David Krejci or Matt Barzal. Just like the way he processes the game. Yes.
Don't say Bergeron though. You'll get people jumping down your throat.
I'm not saying he's the next David Krejci or the next Patrice Bergeron, but the style he plays. Zacha, Krejci, Pastrnak was really great last year. Maybe you go a little outside the box and you go Zacha, Poitras, Pastrnak.
That'd be good.
If you're desperate, could be worth a shot.
I don't even think
we're
you
a
need to
long
be.
ways from moving Zaka to the wing right now, if that ever happens at any point this year. But I wouldn't hate that. I think that would be a pretty creative line.
I don't think you need to be desperate to do that. I like that line. I think the problem is the organization views Zaka as, your next at least number 2 center.
And I think he can be too.
Agreed. I agree. And I think, you could even say, like, if Poitras gets to the point where, he gets past the 9 games, he's a steady producer. At the end of a game, if you need a goal, maybe those are the 3 you throw out there. It's hard not to put Marchand out there or something like that, but maybe you try that. I would love to see that tried. Because to me, like, I look at their top 6 and say nothing should be set in stone yet. I know Montgomery mentioned on Wednesday night, he kind of wants guys to sort of develop chemistry with each other, but I am all for trying things out. Let it be a little bit of a playground to start the season at least. You want to try Poitras up there, you want to try Zaka on the wing, you want to try DeBrusque with different guys. They had Lucic up there on Wednesday night, and they freaking got a goal. Yeah, exactly. They got a goal out of it. So that's what I want to hit on next, the 4th line, because I thought that was their best line.
Yeah.
They best numbers, almost scored to open the game. I thought everyone focused on Lucic, the assist and his play, and Beecher with the fight. I thought Lauko was outstanding.
Yeah.
The whole game, I thought he was great. Feels like you have something with that 4th line.
Yeah, I've really liked it even since I think it was game 1 of the preseason they rolled that out. I thought it was very apparent early on that Johnny Beecher was going to outplay Patrick Brown for the 4C spot.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. Brown's a veteran, signed a 2-year deal, but I mean he'll be up here at some point for injuries or something. He's actually already here because Dan Heinen's still in no man's land.
I saw Sarah Sivian say that Danton Heinen's in like a situationship with the Bruins. I think it's great.
But no, like what I've said, I think Lucic has done a decent enough job keeping up with the 2 burners. I think all 3 of them play a super heavy game, and they just could end up being that line that's an absolute nightmare for opposing defensemen to, you're going back to retrieve a puck. Oh my God, here comes Johnny Beecher flying in, or, something. Milan Lucic is already up against, that's just, that would be just a load to handle. And I thought they were effective from, the start last night. Lucic, first shift, almost connected with Lauko on the doorstep. They almost did it again later in the game. Lauko just missed the open net because he was tied up. But, I thought their usage was perfect too. Just roll them out in the offensive zone. Just let them go nuts on the forecheck and the corners. And it opened up space. They got their chances. And I thought they were really effective.
Yeah, it really, they sort of played it like the Panthers did in the postseason. Just kind of let them forecheck like crazy. I loved the glimpses of Lucic. When you watch Lucic with the puck, there were a couple times that it was like, oh, geez. There was one time we looked at each other when he was trying to bring it out of his own zone after a long time being hemmed in.
40 square feet around him. And he's not getting the puck out.
Dude, flip it off the Jumbotron or something. But, when he has the puck in the O-zone, there are glimpses of that former top 6 forward who can maneuver around defensemen, find passing lanes. You saw it on that 2-on-1, but there were some others in the O-zone on, sustained zone time where he made some really smart passes. And I think that's why you see him get some looks in the top 6. I don't think he sticks there just because of the speed, just because of, the wear and tear. But, overall, there's some offensive upside there. I don't, if you can get 25 points out of him this year, something around that, I think that's perfect. That's good. So, I was happy with that.
He was better than I expected last night, especially, pace-wise. He's obviously not going to be breaking any land speed records. But, all you're asking him to do with Beecher and Lauko, especially those straight line burners, is just keep up. And I thought he was able to do that.
Yeah, that's it. And be responsible in your own zone. And I think that'll, and we'll see again. I'm curious. We won't see a lot of it in the first bunch of games. I want to see this team play against a really good team. I think we'll see that against the Kings. And we'll see that, as the schedule rolls on and you get your Torontos, your Tampas, your Carolinas. But early look, I know it's just Chicago, so it did feel like a little bit of a preseason game still. But at least, it's something to go off of. We have not gotten your predictions for the season.
Oh boy.
Where do you have them finishing, Bruins-wise? Or for the Bruins, where do you have them finishing in the standings, and where do you see them going in the playoffs, if they even make it in your prediction?
Okay, so I think it's really funny that Boston is like the only market that thinks they're going to really stink.
I know.
I think it's the shock value of just all the players they lost in retirement and the first round exit. But the fan base so low going on this team, or at least, the vocal whatever of it. Because you see all the national models and predictions and they're like, second in the Atlantic, third in the Atlantic. It really helps that like Tampa doesn't have Vasilevsky. Florida's like the Bruins last year, where they don't have anybody for the first 3 months of the season.
Yeah.
But I think second or third in the Atlantic is very comfortable for them. I'd probably say third, because I think Tampa will still kind of figure it out even without Vasilevsky. Where that translates into the overall standings of the league, is that top 10? Is that top 12? Maybe. But I do see them getting in the playoffs at worst as a wild card team. I still think, third in the Atlantic is really comfortable. And I think this is a heavy enough roster where if they find themselves against a team like the Panthers last year where they could handle it, I think the bottom six is built better to handle it. Obviously comes down to health on the back end for, a guy like Lindholm, who really struggled when he was hurt last year in the playoffs. But I see them. I mean, I don't want it to be a cop-out, but I think they'll win a round at the very least. I know that's not super spicy, but that's kind of what I've just kind of been beating the drum on. Third in the Atlantic, win a playoff round.
Yeah, I am almost the same. I have third in the Atlantic. I don't see them winning a round.
I'd love to see the matchup, obviously, but one game in.
So the thing is, and I said this last time, but they're heavy. And they're coming off that devastating loss last year. So it wouldn't shock me if they won a round or went the distance. Like, it would not shock me. This is one of those teams that it wouldn't shock me. Nothing would really shock me with this team, right?
Yes.
Like, if they don't win a round, wouldn't shock me. That's what I'm like predicting. I think that's the most likely. If they win a round or go deep, wouldn't shock me. And if they didn't make the playoffs, also wouldn't shock me, because I think there's still, the Atlantic isn't as strong as it has been in past years, but I think that's partially because it's not as certain as it has been in past years. In past years, it's been Leafs, Bruins, Lightning, maybe the Panthers, but those top three are pretty much set from night one. You don't have that this year. It's not as strong of a division, but Buffalo's knocking on the door. Can Ottawa piece it together? Yep. Florida, can they overcome those injuries and get back there? Tampa. So, you have more teams kind of in the mix. So that's why nothing would shock me, but I am third in the Atlantic, losing the first round. But
yeah, I think a lot of it all hinges on what sort of step Buffalo takes. Ottawa. I mean, Detroit did all these things, but they're still pretty far away.
Yeah, I'm not super high on Detroit.
Yeah. The only thing that would shock me would be if everything blew up and they were getting their top 10 pick back.
Yes.
But I could, if they missed the playoffs, I would see it kind of like 2015 or 2016 where they're right there till the end, which would be pretty annoying. But
yeah, I agree with you though. I agree with you on that. But no, I think they'll be okay. Yeah. No, I agree. I think if they miss the playoffs, it will not be because of, my nightmare scenario is, you're at the deadline, you're 10 points out of the playoffs. It's like, all right, who are we trading away? Olmark's gone. DeBrusk, Omar Krislik. It's an easy 3. Get a couple first-round picks out of it. I don't think that's going to happen. So, but again, good first night. I know it's just Chicago, but that's who they played. They took care of business, and that was that. So, Pat, always a pleasure. We'll have to have you on again.
Yeah.
And that's been Bruins Beat, presented by our good friends over at Fanduel. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.
The CLNS Media Network is powered by Fanduel. Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose.